Hello everybody and welcome to Adobe Live. We would like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land in which we are creating and streaming from today and pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging. I'm the host today, Flynn Tracy, and I'm here with Illustrator Jeremy Lord. What's up, Jeremy? How you doing?
Yo, how's it going?
I'm good. I just noticed
Thanks
how much
for having
neon
me
you have
again.
in the background.
Yeah. Neon is my jam.
Neon's in. I love it. So last time we spoke, I was overseas and you interviewed some of the great people for Adobe Max that we've had in region. Had Pablo, who did some great stuff with, he did an awesome session on 3D. So you guys can check that out. I'm sure, surprise, Johanna, can you dig those up? Find those at some point during our stream today. Check them out. They were really, really cool. Really great interviews that we had. And they also had these great sessions as well as part of Max. I hope you guys had a good time checking out all the content. There's so much like I haven't caught up with because there's so much stuff going on. But you also had a chat with the fantastic Gemma O'Brien as well. So how did you find that compared to like doing demos and stuff like we're doing today?
It was hard, man. Your job is difficult, very difficult. You got to pay attention to what you're doing. Like, it's ironic actually, because it's like when I'm doing illustration, when I'm just kind of doing this, it's just like, it's just what I do. But doing your job is like, oh, wow, okay, this is really hard. I need to like be careful and pay attention. But no, I had a super good time. It was really cool to like chat to both of them, get to watch their sessions beforehand as well, get a bit of a sneak peek into that. And just have that conversation with them about kind of a lot of the same things that we kind of speak about when we're doing these kinds of streams. So yeah, it was really cool.
Yeah, great. We'll dig those up and check them out. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed your Max experience wherever you were in the world. There's a lot of great stuff and it's all still available. As far as I'm aware, everything's still available this year. So go and check it out. But Halloween, so my fun little Halloween story, because I was in LA and was hanging out with some of the Americans, particularly Andrew Hockradell, and hanging out with him, and we were talking about Halloween. I said, well, we don't really have Halloween in Australia like you do here in America. And he said, your country sucks. And that's really that's really stuck with me. So partially inspired by that we don't suck over here. But yeah, Halloween's not exactly the same over here. But hey, we can draw our dreams. So I'm sharing your screen now, Jeremy. We're going to get into it. We're here until 2, so we're here for about an hour. Jump in. If you've got any questions, let us know where you're from, or let us know what your favorite session from Max was as well. If there was a particular name or something, you don't have to find the link or anything. Let me know the name or something. I'm really interested to hear what people enjoyed. Let's get into it. Enough chit chat. Enough chit chat from me.
So we're going to keep it pretty rough and ready today. Like you said, Halloween. Halloween, because I quite like the whole like spooky vibe of things. There's something about it that lets me kind of work with the colors, get some glows, get that neon kind of vibe, get some magic literally going on the page. So we're going to do something kind of Halloween-y today, and we're going to keep it pretty sketchy. So I'm going to do, I've been playing a little bit of WoW, and there's a Headless Horseman event happening at the moment. So
Hallow's End,
that has inspired me.
Did you ever get the mount?
No, I never got the mount.
I have the mount.
Got a bunch of other stuff.
But yeah, anyway.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cool. So we're just going to do like a kind of like the pumpkin head, kind of flaming pumpkin head, get it all kind of Halloween-y vibes. And eventually I will clean this up as well. So I'm working just in Photoshop as usual. And I am working at a format that's going to be a screensaver. So when I finish this, we'll pop a link in the description of the video, and you can hopefully download the screensaver if you
cool.
dig it.
Awesome. Little freebie.
So just a little kind of like pumpkin shape. Drawn a few of these, so I kind of already know what they look like. But yeah, we've spoken about this idea of getting reference if you're not sure what something looks like. Make sure that you're doing it right and what a pumpkin actually looks like. But again, like we've kind of done this before, so I can kind of just wing it at this stage.
Right. Yeah. So there's certain objects that you've drawn enough that you kind of have a bit of an idea. So you don't really need the reference at that point. But it would be okay to use a reference if you're thinking, wait, what does a pumpkin look like again?
I think it would be more than okay. I think it would be like absolutely required for sure.
Right.
And even beyond that, like have a look at, like what do kind of Halloween pumpkins look like? What do people do? Like how do they make the eyes or the mouth or whatever? But yeah, I'm just kind of like riffing on this one, seeing how it all kind of turns out. I've done the same thing that I would normally do on any head, is done the little crosshairs to kind of put the eyes and the mouth in.
Right.
And yeah, so we go. Get rid of that. Get a big cutout pumpkin smile in there as well. I'll probably have to come in and clear it up a little bit later on too, because I'm getting a little bit kind of crazy here with this line work because of the lines of the actual pumpkin itself. So we can kind of do that in a sec, but let's just get the basic shape down. I'm going to give him some little kind of bat wings as well. Why not? Just make him like a, flying thing. It's Halloween, so let's give it some little like bat wings. Go nuts.
Nice.
Doesn't have to be too kind of exactly kind of bat wings, but nice to just kind of get that little bit of a reference in there.
That's cool. Can you just check if something's rubbing against the microphone or something like that? Just want to. If there's not, it's fine.
I don't think so.
Okay, sounds good now.
Sorry.
That's all right.
Yeah. So cool. There we go. Got some basic wings in. Might give him a kind of like a big. I've been reading a little bit of Venom lately.
Oh yeah.
The comic. I just like there's something about the Venom tongue kind of sticking out and being real like it's long thing, always like lots of kind of drool coming off of it. Quite like that. So I'm gonna do something like that on this guy.
That's cool. Yeah, I've often wondered like how deep they go into. I'm sure there's another word for it, but like the brand identity guidelines for characters like that. Like,
yeah.
Because the Venom symbiote, it always looks like this like thick, goopy liquid, and I wonder if it's just they work with renowned artists, and they all kind of generally do the same thing, or if there's actual like guidelines around it, like it has to have this like toxic sludge kind of look, like it can't be too watery or it needs to be included or anything. Yeah,
I'd say so. I think it like that's the look of it, right? It's like the you're right. It's kind of like a brand as well for that. You need people to be able to recognize it instantly, but also just have that kind of look and feel. So it's always like big cold colors as well on things like Venom. Like all the highlights are usually kind of like blue, obviously because the character's like quite dark, and that those kind of highlights would work with blue and stuff. But yeah, I think there's probably something like that, but how much you can kind of improv on that would be a interesting question to ask those artists as well.
Yeah.
Cool.
We got a question as well, easy one to start with. Do you celebrate Halloween, Jeremy?
I don't not celebrate Halloween, but yeah, I don't have a pumpkin outside my house or any kind of like spiders or spider webs or anything like that happening out there at the moment. So yeah, I guess that means I don't really celebrate Halloween.
Yeah. It's not as big a thing here, is it?
No, not really. I think it's also like, I feel like Halloween kind of needs like a wintry vibe. Kind of needs like the autumn and the orange leaves and everything to kind of complete the look.
Right.
Which we don't have because we are upside down and we do Christmas in summer and all the kind of things, which takes a bit of getting used to when you're from the Northern Hemisphere originally. But yeah, it's it's a perfectly cromulent holiday.
I was going to say cromulent.
Quite like it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I was disappointed as a kid that it wasn't such a thing because, you know, you grew up like watching a lot of like American TV and everything, and it always seems like a really fun one, especially when you're a kid and you get to go around and cause mischief and get candy. Like, what's not to like?
Yeah, 100%. And it's like you watch those animations, like Nightmare Before Christmas is still to this day one of my favorite like animations and stories all around. It's just such a cool something about it that's really, even though it has obviously kind of stepped away from the traditional, like from its origins, but that's okay too.
Mm.
All right, so we're just cleaning this up now, getting a little bit of that cleaner line work happening. Sometimes I would also stick this in blue just to kind of make my life a bit easier, so I can kind of see the difference in between the light and the dark here.
And do you often do that after? Like, because you did it in like grey, or it just doesn't really matter either.
Probably doesn't really matter. There's also something, this might sound a little bit kind of a bit pretentious, but presentation is also something that's important whenever you're kind of, you know, passing this on to a client. I quite like the look of this. It kind of reminds me of doing, you know, those old kind of traditional sketches where you would work with blue, coming from an animation background as well. It's just something about it that I quite like, showing something like this with the black outline on top. It looks like a kind of like a real drawing, so to speak. And I just think it kind of sells the picture a little bit more too. So
right.
But at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter whether it's blue or even just a light gray. It's the same thing, really. So do what you like, I think. But I dig the blue, so that's what I'm doing.
Nice. Very good. There's a question in chat for me from Johanna. Do you think you'll celebrate Halloween a lot with your kids? Yes, so we will this year. So we were debating about it a while ago, but I came back and Claire has bought outfits, like created outfits for the kids. And they're outrageously cute if you think kids are cute. So yeah, that'll be fun because I'm in the burbs now. So kind of preparing for whatever's happening around here.
Are you reckon you get trick-or-treated?
I think so. I think we've got to get some chocolates and stuff.
Yeah. House will get egged if you don't have anything ready.
Yeah.
Gotta be careful.
We don't want that.
Do they do that here? Is there a lot of trick-or-treating happening?
I don't know. I've always really lived in the city, really. Like, I'll let you know.
Yeah.
I mean, not when I was growing up in the burbs around here. I don't think I saw someone like walking around with, you know, baker's dozen of eggs or anything like that. But now that I'm the one that would have to clean the house, I think I'm a little bit more aware of it. So we'll see.
You might pay more attention to it.
Yeah. And have to start setting up some traps out the front or something.
All right.
It's cool. I like this. So this is with no reference. You're just thinking about like, the Venom tongue and a bit inspired by like Hallow's End that's happening there. Are the bat wings from reference, or we just kind of drew wings?
Yeah, they're just like, again, I've kind of drawn stuff like this before. It's just your standard kind of like shape of a bat wing. Would just kind of, you know, do this with a hook there and then whoop, that's it. And then fingers. But then you can kind of do variations on that as you like. So mine are a little bit kind of torn and they've got some holes in them, and you know they've seen some stuff. Again, this is where like stuff like this I find is can be really fun to do because you can really just go nuts and see kind of what happens with the whole thing, and you know give it a little bit of wear and tear, and kind of let's do like the other side of like, you know, seem like a little bit of a cut there, so there's a scar happening on that eye. Can do some more kind of bits of wear and tear. We can do that with color a little bit later on too, but that's looking pretty good. Let me go in. Something I like to do often as well is go into my filters here once the kind of the drawing is done, and do a liquify. Here we go. And then kind of just push things around to see, like, you know, how can I improve on this? Is there anything that I can do? Like maybe make the eyes even more kind of down. Like that's kind of really starting to look a little bit kind of crazy. Can reconstruct if we want. Do that. Actually, I'm just cancel. Go back in. So we can, like, yeah, there's a little bit that we can kind of do with this and just kind of push things around. Like I'm not huge on that line down here. Maybe needs a little bit more volume at the top because we want that kind of shape happening. And I could redraw this, like, you know, this is just kind of like lazy man's redraw. It can save you a little bit of work if you do it this way, but it can also, sometimes it's easier just to redraw it actually.
Right.
But yeah, this is, I kind of like how this is looking. I might just rescale this a little bit just so I can bring in some text in here, smack that on a new layer and do like a basic rough frame of where the text could go, and call that Hallows End. Twenty-two.
Is that something like, because that seems pretty early to be thinking about like composition, or is that you really want to be thinking about if you're going to add type like early on where it's going to go?
If you, especially if this is a mandatory, so obviously this is like a personal illustration, so it doesn't really matter too much. Like I can take things away or put them back in if I need to. There's no mandatories, but if you know, for instance, if you're doing like a poster or if you're doing a sticker and the client's logo needs to go on there, or, you know, there needs to be some type, anything that has to go on there, I would always advise that you need to do that sooner rather than later, because you could end up with a really cool composition and then it's like, where does the type go? You know? Right. So you don't want to be in that situation where you've got a really cool piece of type or a really cool piece of illustration and then the two don't fit together because you haven't thought about how those two things are going to work. So you know, it's never too early to think about the composition and how that's going to look.
It's never too early.
There we go. I think that's probably a little bit better on the chin down there. And let's give him some like flame kind of aura as well. So let me just hide this for now. And again, just doing this real kind of rough. Give it a little bit of sense of motion as well. So it's kind of flying through the air. Question is, do I do it on the rest of the tongue as well, or does it just go around the main body of the pumpkin? Probably needs to go on at least the wings, I would say. Yeah. And maybe not the tongue. Here we go. And then the type. Rescale that a little bit. Make sure we're not overlapping anything like majorly important, like the wing. If I've got a bunch of type on that wing, might kind of not be great because you wouldn't be able to read the image as well. So it's important to think about that too, like where you're putting stuff and how you can kind of move it around without, you know, hiding anything major. Like obviously, like states the obvious, but you don't want to put it like right on the face.
Right.
But things that are going to be like important, like, you know, like I said, the wing. If I'm cutting off the little bit of the stem here, that's okay. I can probably live with that. So I'm going to group these two guys, all these guys together, call this line work. And let's get into some color. So let me make a new group. Call this one colors. And I've picked some colors here on the side. You can see these kind of like Halloween colors. Obviously, I've got kind of like oranges and stuff like that. I've got something that I know I'm going to make kind of like some sort of highlight with. And then my background, I think, is going to be predominantly purple. Because purple and orange are complementary colors. And complementary colors together just work super, super well. It's the reason why you'll see it on like the Lakers, for instance, like purple and yellow or purple and orange. It's just like, it just works super, super well. And it'll bring out that kind of contrast really well. And it's just more interesting than just, you know, plain old black as well. So
right,
let's go with that kind of purple. That can live in the background. That's cool. And then we're going to start sticking in some colors. So the orange of the pumpkin, I could start and just kind of, you know, fill with this like actual orange pumpkin. But what I want is for the inside of the eyes, the cutout where the eyes have been kind of cut out, I want that to be really bright. So that's actually going to be the orange that I'm working with right now. So what I actually need to do is I need to make sure that the outside of the pumpkin is quite dark. And so that's going to be this kind of like dark pumpkin color. And then when I pop the eyes on there, you'll see what I mean. A tip for you guys as well is whenever you're working with yellow, orange, like that kind of range of color, never just bring it down to add some black in your color palette here. You see how I've got that color, and if I just bring it down, it goes progressively towards black. The reason you don't do that, and this holds true with paints as well, if you're mixing paints and you've got a yellow and you put some black in it, it's gonna go this like horrible baby poo color. It's not nice at all.
Yeah, I recognize that color. Yeah.
So what you want is you just want to make it a little bit warmer, and you want to drag it into the red tones, and then you get this kind of like, that's a shade of your orange.
Right. Okay.
So it's just going to make it a little bit warmer and actually kind of what you're looking for. So let's go ahead and put some eyes in on that. So now I could do kind of two things here. I could actually cut out the eyes from this, right? So I could do something like this where I'm going to go in and kind of select that and just delete the inside of that, right? And then what I would do is I would work on a layer behind that and start filling in those colors. So you can see now, because I've got a dark kind of pumpkin, the eyes inside, the light inside really starts to pop, and it just makes so much more sense. So I could do it this way, and then I've got a heap of control, or I could just put a new layer on top and work with that. So I'm probably going to do this. I'm also going to want to put a outer glow on that, and I need that to be in front of the pumpkin in order for it to work. So there we go. We've got an outer glow happening. Let's increase the size of this a little bit like that. That's not bad. Cool. And we might even, oh no, I'll do that later actually. And there we go. So that's looking pretty good. And I can start to fill that in as I need. And it might start to be a little bit too much as I'm going. Like, I'm not loving how that's looking right now. So the neon glow thing can be super cool for doing, you know, like neon like bars, if you're doing kind of like an 80s kind of theme or whatever. That can be super cool, but you can see that that's just too uniform. It's like, it's not looking really good. So I'm going to can that for now and just keep it like this. And what I might do later on is just add a little bit of a blur, or come in with just kind of like a little bit of a background kind of color, just to fix that up so that I can get that kind of theme going. And let me switch brushes as well to something a little bit more flat. There we go.
So we have.
Oh
yeah, go on.
No, go ahead.
I don't want to interrupt you, but I have a question. So, BZOA on YouTube, thanks for the question. So they're asking, are you using a pen and tablet? I'll answer that quickly. Yes, Jeremy is using a pen and a tablet. So there's a follow-up question. Does Jeremy recommend a pen and tablet for illustrating in Photoshop? Are there any real alternatives to a pen and tablet? Thanks.
That is a good question. The short answer is no, there is no real alternative to a pen and tablet in Photoshop. Or, I mean, if you're using something like Fresco or something, you could always use an iPad, and I mean, that's basically the same idea. It's just a different tool. But like I use a Wacom Cintiq, and like there's no way I could be doing any of this without it. Like there is, but you're really making life difficult for yourself if you're trying to do something like this. And I mean, just like a drawing like this with like a mouse, you're really making life more difficult than it needs to be for yourself. So yeah, the short answer is like, no, there is no alternative for something like this. And you absolutely need some kind of thing that's going to allow you to not have to use a mouse to draw, basically.
Right.
What brand that is kind of up to you. I go for the Wacom ones simply because they are the kind of the industry leaders, and they're probably, I would say, the best, but that's my opinion.
Yeah.
Not sponsored by Wacom.
Not sponsored. Lifetime user. So what about like so I'm just thinking of like, alternatives to like, before going out and getting a tablet, like what about, because it's about the pressure sensitivity, right? That's a big part of it. And also how quickly you can create, I assume. Because if I was trying to do this on a mouse, it would look very janky. There would be no pressure sensitivity at all. So it would look very unnatural. It would look very flat, I assume, for the sketching and things like that. But what about drawing like on a, piece of cartridge paper or something, and then scanning in or taking a photo, and then jumping to this step where you're doing color? Would you run into any particular issues with that other than it taking a bit more time? Or yeah. What do you think about that when I say, what if I did that today?
Again, yeah, same thing. I think you'd be doing yourself a disservice,
right,
to be doing that, because it's just like it's going to make your life a lot harder, even just kind of doing the inking, getting the colors in. Even as you saw, like I'm doing kind of selections here, I can draw them in. Doing that with the mouse starts to be really kind of a little bit harder to work with. So I think, yeah, that these kind of tools can be quite expensive for sure. But it's one of those things, I think, if you are kind of serious about kind of doing digital illustration as a career, you're 100% going to have to, at some point, get into one of these, because it just means you'll be able to draw digitally rather than kind of have to use a mouse, which is really just not drawing digitally at all.
Well, there you go. Great question. It comes up every now and then, the stylus, what do you use, entry level. I think we've said this many times before on the streams, but if you're looking into it, it's a good time to get into using like a pen and tablet, because there's just so many options now. So there's entry level, options. So, I assume Jeremy's probably using like Intuos or something, which is more on the higher end. Is that
that's right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm using a Cintiq, which is the pen, like it's actually a screen. But like, yeah, if you get an Intuos, which is the one that's not a screen, it's just, you're not looking where you're drawing kind of thing. You're just using it normally. It like my one costs over $4,000 Australian. So it's not super accessible in that sense, but you don't have to pay that much if you're looking to just not use a mouse, right? Like if the point is, I don't want to use a mouse, like you can have options that are a lot kind of cheaper than that, a lot more accessible for beginners. Also, a lot more kind of friendly to just like try it, see how you like it kind of thing, without having to like break the bank. So there's definitely options, there's definitely brands out there, but I cannot recommend enough the idea that you need something like this to work with, because it's just impossible otherwise. Not impossible.
Yeah. And just to compare, like quick Google search of like the entry level compared to what Jeremy's using. Yeah, exactly. Like $4,000 is a lot. It's obviously professional equipment, but entry level, into a small is $100 Australian. So just if you compare, like that's what an entry level thing is for. Like I'm not too sure if I want to invest a lot in here, or, am I going to produce work that might be, get to the point where it's paying for itself, which is what the idea of professional software and professional equipment might be for someone, depending on your situation. So there's definitely cheaper options out there through Wacom and other brands as well. So, and you can get a pretty good feel of how things work, and you can do a lot of what Jeremy's doing now. So there you go.
Yeah. Yeah, that's basically it. It's just, trying to gauge what you like, whether you're a mobile kind of user, whether you're going to prefer doing iPad or whether you prefer being at a desk or whatever. It's just those things are all kind of considerations that you should think about. But yeah, I do absolutely think that it's really like you will need something like this in order to do what I'm doing.
There we go. This is looking cool.
Right.
It's like, this is very, I don't know if it's going to stay sketchy. I think this happens sometimes when you're drawing. I'm like, kind of like, it's pretty done. Like, I really like the sketchy, the sketchy style coming through the, the big block colors. And I know it's going to look a lot cleaner and crisper in a bit, but when you do the line work, but I always think, oh man, I'd be so happy with this.
There's definitely something around that of like, you do the sketch and it's like, oh man, and then you finish it off and it's just like, man, my sketch was just so much better. Trying to balance the colors here as well to kind of get something that I like going. So I get asked this a lot of like, how do you choose your colors? And like, do you choose them beforehand, or do you already know what you're going to be doing color wise before you get into it? Sometimes yes, and sometimes no. Like for instance, right here, to get that kind of like that saliva on the tongue, I've gone with this like pink, which I kind of dig. But it's also potentially going to be like clashing with other things. Same with this this kind of like green aura behind it. So there will definitely come a time, and that time is now, where I'll go like, all right, how does this look if I go into the hue saturation menu, so it's Command U, Control U, and I start messing with that with different colors to see like, what if it was all yellow? Does that work as well? It's a little bit too similar to the background. Red or pink could be cool, but again, we're not getting that kind of same contrast happening with the purple. So, like there will be absolutely times when I will mess around with this and see like, what color should these things be and how do they work if they're different colors. So it's not necessarily like I know exactly what I'm going to be doing from the get-go, and that never changes. There's definitely a little bit of kind of room for me to play around with this and see where it goes.
Yeah, cool. And when you were changing that, you were changing the individual layer, so you weren't changing everything at once.
Yeah, so I'm on the that kind of layer here, and then Command U, and then it just does this. There is a way to change everything at once, which is why I've grouped these into a layer here, a group, sorry. And that is one of my favorite things. I can actually do shading this way, and this is the way that I do my shading, is I go down to here, this little kind of middle icon, create a new adjustment layer. And I will go in down to where it says hue saturation. It's the same menu, just a slightly different application of it. And then I can mess around with the colors, and that will change all the colors uniformly, including the background, as you can see. So I can actually, I kind of dig the pink light inside actually. I can make this so that it only affects the group or the layer immediately underneath it, which is this button right here. So clicking that, as you saw now, means that the purple in the background doesn't change, only the actual drawing or whatever's in that layer group.
Sorry, so that button means that it will affect everything just below.
It's affecting whatever is immediately below, whether that's a layer
or
be a group of layers.
Okay, totally. So if you only have one layer, it'd only be one layer in that case.
That's right. Yeah. Okay. So if you wanted to apply to several layers like I've got here, then you need to put those into a group. Cool. Otherwise, you'll only be able to do it to the one thing that's immediately underneath it.
Right. Okay. Cool.
So that is how, like I said, that is how I would do my shading. So bring it back down to 0, and then drop the lightness of this a little bit. Maybe increase the saturation, maybe kind of play with some color too, just to give it a bit of warmth. We're probably not going to do this too much on this one, simply because like there isn't going to be much ambient light happening on this. But essentially, if I now come in with my brush, I can start to mask out. You can see what's going to happen here. I've got kind of these shadows happening on that. And I should probably take these guys out of that group so that they're not being affected by that mask. So there, so you can see that kind of happens where now I've got this like this lighting effect happening on my pumpkin, which is cool, but I'm not after that right now because I want the light to come in from the pumpkin. So I'm actually just going to get rid of that and that, bring these two guys back into the folds, and we're good to go. And actually my pumpkin's probably a little bit too bright still. So I'm going to darken that up to really make the inside of those kind of eyes really glow. And now is when I might go and start messing around with like, how do I get a glow on those eyes? How do I kind of the eyes look like they're glowing from the inside? So I could try and do it like this. So I'm going to duplicate this layer. And I'm going to go to my filters and I'm going to go to blur, Gaussian blur. There we go. And that kind of does a similar thing to what you saw was happening with the neon glow, but maybe a little bit less like uniform everywhere. So that's not too bad. I'm not too unhappy about that. There's a little bit of trial and error that's going to happen for sure with this. The other thing that I can do is I can make a new layer, select that color and start kind of messing around with gradients like this, and maybe just put them where the eyes are and maybe put one where the mouth is going. But it's not working super well either. So I think we'll just leave it with this Gaussian blur, and then I can drop the opacity of that layer down, and then I can smash these together if I want to. I might not, and I might just group them and call them eyes. There we go. And then I can also kind of control this if I want to change just the individual inside of the eyes. I can do that too, you know, changing the color here. And there's lots of different things that we can do with this. But let's keep it kind of traditional pumpkin colors. We can also get some texture on this pumpkin. So let me grab, let me grab that color here and just get some variation happening. So bring it back into some oranges. There we go. And I can start to kind of see what that would look like if I went maybe a little bit darker actually is what I need. Again, a little bit of trial and error, just kind of playing around with how that looks. If I'm really unsure, I could also just put it on a new layer, and then I don't have to commit to anything right now. I can just start to, you know, kind of mess around with something like this. This is maybe where I wouldn't mind kind of seeing some reference of kind of what pumpkin coloration might look like. But
do you ever
yeah,
use like, because that was just kind of like a, actually if you could zoom in one more, I know you're probably zooming quite, that's a good spot for it, but just every now and then if we could, so that's kind of just a standard brush. Would you ever use like a textured brush for this, or would it not work because it would look flat because it's a round shape? Do you know what I mean?
No, I could absolutely go in and go, all right, let's see how this looks if I've got this kind of like textured brush. Let's go with like a, I don't know, like one of these Kyle dry media brushes. They're actually, let me go maybe one of these. There we go. And that might be kind of a little bit more interesting, get a little bit more texture happening with that. So if we go into my transfer here, I can change that to pen pressure. This is where having a pen will make a big difference in terms of kind of that pressure being applied to on a per brush basis rather than kind of just flat colors. But because the style of illustration that I like to work with, I prefer just having kind of flat colors like this and working with that. But there is absolutely a scenario where maybe a bit of a textured brush would be better for something like this. But just making them look a little bit kind of rotten, I guess, is what I'm after here. Same thing with the wings and the stem. We're going to actually lock the transparency on this layer. So if we go on that layer, we should probably name it as well, and save too. That's not a bad idea. Call this wings. Okay. And I can just lock it with here. So this locks the transparency on that layer. It just means that I'm not going to paint anywhere else. And I might choose that color and go with a kind of a slightly lighter, maybe greener. No, go with something like this. And then same thing here, get this kind of like reptile kind of skin vibe happening just on the ends of the wings. Just get a little bit of kind of that texture.
Nice.
If that makes sense. And I can even maybe go a little bit darker on that.
Hey, so we have 15 minutes left, guys. So if you've got questions or comments or anything like that, throw them in chat. Don't miss out. Only 15 minutes left.
Better get a hustle on. Yeah, so that's not too bad. Maybe stick a glow on that one. This, I think, will be working with a glow that will actually do what I need it to do. Decrease the size a little bit. Yeah, that's looking great. And maybe put that. By the way, if you're doing neon glows like this with the outer glow, the setting that you're looking for 99 times out of 100 is linear dodge. Don't leave it on normal. Go to linear dodge add. It'll behave like light a lot more. It's kind of hard to explain very quickly why that is and how that works exactly. It's just one of those settings that just works a lot better if it is on linear dodge.
Cool. Good to know. It's just like, just do it this way.
Yep.
Don't ask why. Just do it this way. We can.
Cool. So we're almost kind of there.
I like that the pumpkin's looking like it's probably been sitting on someone's porch for about 2 months before it kind of became sentient and started flying around.
He needs a bit of rot, right? He needs that kind of.
He's seen some stuff.
Look like it's just kind of It's got some city miles on him. Cool. And now we can maybe start thinking about some of that type. So let me make a new group here. We'll call this type. And we'll start kind of putting in some work into that. So here again, I'm going to go relatively rough. I'm probably going to stay with this kind of like orange theme that I've got. And maybe I'll put a kind of like a background behind, like a stroke on it as well. So we could, here also probably I wouldn't mind looking at some examples of kind of horror fonts or something and kind of see how that goes. But that would probably take a little bit too much time for what we've got left on the stream. Right. So I'm just going to go with something a little bit simpler, and maybe just a standardy, and then give it some texture later on, just to make it look a little bit kind of wear and tear. Get that kind of like 80s retro kind of horror movie look as well. So again, like I would ideally spend a fair bit more time than what I'm doing right now on something like this.
How long would you spend on type? I mean, probably it's a hard question to answer, but
yeah, I guess it's more of like a how long is a piece of string kind of thing. It depends on how much type there is here too. But it's something that I quite enjoy working with. And if it's something like this, where it is kind of like, I guess, the title of the illustration, it's pretty important to make sure that you're getting that kind of correct and looking the way you need it to look. So, you know, it's definitely worth putting in the work and time to get that looking right. And let's put a stroke on this and make it maybe purple. That'll do. And maybe a darker purple than that. Actually, there we go. And now we can continue just painting with this, and my thing will just kind of auto update with that.
That's happening. Cool. Can you show us how you did that again, if you don't mind?
Yeah, sure. But if you're doing this on a really big layer with lots of different things to it, this can really make your system chug, right? So I wouldn't advise doing big paintings this way, but it's literally just double click on here and you bring up the layer style and then go to stroke. And I change the size here so I can give it a lot of size. And it's, as you see, because I've got preview ticked right here, it shows me live, and then I can change the color, and that will also change as I change it. So just went with that, this purple, and now if I paint, it'll just automatically update with the effect that's already on that layer, so long as I'm painting on that layer.
Right. It's weird because I'm just trying to work this out, what's happening in my head, because the H was done with lots of lines. Like, it was kind of sketchy done, wasn't it? It wasn't done with one stroke.
Yeah, well, because
so why
these guys
isn't it
are
making
smaller.
multiple? Okay.
Oh, so like if I'm sketching like this.
Yeah. Oh, it's taking over. The inside is taking over. It's kind of sitting in front of the, almost like the outline.
You can change the settings there if you want to. So here you see you got the position. If I change that to outside, it's obviously going from the outside of that shape to create something. If I do it on the inside, it's almost going to fill the inside because it's going from the edge.
That's what I was
the center.
That's what I was expecting it to kind of look like. I was just trying to work out what was going on behind the scenes there. Okay.
Or it rides the middle of the line, which does this. But I almost always have it on the outside because you want it to not intrude on the actual line work that you've done. You just want it to be an add-on to that.
Yeah.
So having it on the outside is almost always going to be the go for something like this.
That's cool. There you go.
And then I can come in with something a little bit different. So let me get rid of these lines here. That's actually looking pretty cool without any of the kind of the line work. It's not too bad. But what I'm looking for is to get rid of this and get rid of that too. Cool. And I'm going to bring in potentially a red 2022. What I'd love here is if it was just like, like actual horror movie, kind of like Halloween's End 2, like this kind of thing. That'd be sick. But we're doing 2022. So we're going to try and get something like that vibe. And often what you see in those things is like the number kind of goes over the type.
Yeah.
And kind of gets written kind of like it's like smeared in blood kind of thing.
Yeah. As if it's been like either scratched or like graffitied over the top of the like something. Yeah.
And we can change the color of that too if we want it to be. That's probably more in line with where the whole color vibe of this piece is going. That's probably a lot better. And then I can kind of make this look a little bit brushy if I want to get that kind of look happening. This is all fabricated, by the way. Obviously, like I'm trying to make it look like I did this with a brush pen. I could just get a brush and try and see what happens there. But I tend to find it's a bit ironic because it's like, you know, you're faking it to make it look a certain way. Why don't you just get the thing that makes it look that way naturally?
Yeah.
But because of the nature of these kinds of brushes, you don't necessarily have full control. And I really kind of need full control over like where stuff goes on something like this. So I will just kind of take the time and the craft to like make this look the way it should. And then I can start to come in here and, you know, start to kind of give this a little bit of texture if I want to. If I want to make it look a little bit kind of like stony, I can come in with some kind of cracks into this and see how that kind of works out. Give it that kind of little bit of a rough edge.
Yeah, it's like a bit of texture.
Yeah. I could also see what happens if I come in, and again, this is probably going to need some reference work, but let's see how my brain is going to serve me up what a spider web looks like in a corner. I could just come in with some kind of spider webby looking stuff.
I like it.
It's not too bad, I think.
Looks cool.
So
it seems like a computer game that I definitely want to play.
Yeah, some like old kind of fun, not too scary, just the right amount of fun kind of vibe, which is what like we're kind of going for on this, right? It's this idea that you've got a little bit of kind of like, it's scary, but it's also really cool because it's really kind of like neon-y.
Yeah.
Get a bit of shine on these kind of drops here. Make it look a little bit disgusting, bit gross. It is Halloween after all. And that's kind of the basic idea here. Like, you know, trying to see how this all kind of works together. Trying to get the composition looking right and making sure that all kind of lines up the way you need it to. Moving things around just so that we got kind of what we're after. And then, you know, obviously, if I was doing this kind of properly, I would come in with an actual new layer in here and kind of clean these outlines up. And that would be done with just the standard brush that I'm using here. So just this, like I've called it round Inco. It's your standard brush, nothing fancy about the shape of it. It just has a tapered edge from the pressure sensitivity of my brush, of my pen, sorry. So if I press down hard, I get a thick outline. If I press down light, I get a light outline. So I can get this kind of inking feeling of like a tapered edge. And I've increased the smoothing a little bit to like 20-ish, just so that I can kind of work with that. So at this point, you know, I would probably do this before doing colors, but for the purposes of the stream, we kind of fast forward a little bit.
Right.
But I would, I would go in and drop this opacity down, hide these colors for a sec. They'll come back in a minute. And then just work on these outlines. And this is where obviously some more definitions going to come into this line work. Depending on what it is that I'm doing, right? So as you were saying before, like the kind of the sketchy nature of it is definitely something that I'm trying to get into a little bit more. Normally,
it has its own style, like it has its own like appeal.
I would never normally do this, right? Like that for me is a big no-no where the line kind of doesn't connect. But more and more, I'm kind of trying to kind of see, you know, trying to get that natural kind of feeling back into something, especially for something a little bit kind of sketchier like this. I think that can be super kind of appropriate for this kind of a drawing, but also is less work for me and kind of takes less time to do. So that's a win there. But
that's a win.
there is definitely something quite nice about having a nice kind of clean kind of vector style outline, but every now and then it can also be super fun to just kind of cut loose. And
It's a bit out of your comfort zone, maybe a little bit as well.
Definitely, yeah. Like we talk about this a little bit with guys like Dale, for instance, who likes to work a lot with black and white, and kind of the challenges of doing like actual proper inking versus what I do here, which is not really inking. It's just kind of cleaning up with ink. It's not quite the same thing. And I find, you know, what he does a lot harder than what I do, which is probably normal, because if it was harder, then I wouldn't do it. So obviously my way is easier for me, but yeah.
We're gonna have to. We're actually almost out of time, so we're gonna have to leave it there. I love that you saved the line work to just at the end as a bit of a demo, just so we could get to color. That was great. But so we don't run out of time. Thanks for joining us. Thanks everybody for hanging out with us with fantastic Jeremy Lord. Check him out on Instagram. Behance got a website as well with a lot of his fantastic work there. He'll be back again on Adobe Live, I am absolutely certain. And we hope you all have a fantastic Halloween.
Thanks for watching, and keep an eye out for this background somewhere on the YouTube description, maybe.
Well, yeah, if you send it to us, or we'll upload it somewhere, we'll put it on Dropbox or something, we'll share a link. So if you're watching this on replay, if you made it to the end, congratulations, we will share a link down there. We'll leave it up for a couple of months or something like that, and you can go grab a freebie when it's done. Thanks, everyone.
Great.
Gotta go.
Thank you. See ya.
Bye.